Hello everybody, thanks for joining me again. This is part 2 of our hood build series, 200th scale hood by Trumpeter. In the last video we just detailed some of the modifications we needed to make on the hull, and that's what we're going to be doing today. So the first thing that we're going to be doing is sorting out, drilling through for some bolts and captive nuts in the hull that are going to help us mount the model when we make the pedestals later on in the build. So we'll take that first, then we're going to remove the moulded in degaussing coil. That's going to be replaced with some Pontos etched brass. The other thing that we're going to do is take off these fairings right at the front of the hull. They were there to help lift the degaussing coil over the hosepipe exits. But Trumpeters moulded these incorrectly, they're the wrong shape, so we take those off, and again they'll be re-provided in the Pontos set. I'll probably go on, depending on how that goes, I'll probably go on to cut out the deck parts and fit the braces on the inside of the hull, so that that's got a chance to set up. So that's what we'll be covering in this particular video, and we'll get on with the first part of that now and get these holes drilled. So the first thing I'm going to do is measure out the position for the holes, and at this stage we've still got the centre seam for the model. We'll be taking that away later on, but in the meantime it's useful just to give us the centre point of the hull to get the holes drilled right in the middle of the model. I also want to make sure that it's relatively equidistant from the front and back of the ship, the two holes. There's two mounting points that I'm going to be using, so I'm just going to measure up for that. I'm just going to mark off the midpoint of the hull. So obviously we've got the positions equidistant from the fore and aft of the ship here, and I'm just going to put a pilot hole using the marking that we've made and the centre line moulding that's going to be removed later, but as I said, that's useful to get the correct location for these holes. So I'm just going to put a pilot hole in first. We've got the pilot holes. Not a tool you often see on the hobby bench, but we need to drill the correct size hole for these M5 bolts. So there we are, we've got the two holes drilled. Obviously they'll be tidied up when we come to sort the centre seam out. So I've got a set of M5 bolts, nuts and plane and spring washers, and the idea now is to fix the nuts into the inside of the hull so that we can later on put the bolts up through the hull, or through the pedestal and the hull. So they've got to be fixed into place. I'll be using some plastic strip to build around those and prevent the nut from spinning. So we'll zoom in a little bit on that and let's get that done. Okay, so we've fitted the bolt on the centre line there through the hull, and we've got the nut and washer in place. So that's where we want the nut and washer to be when we finish this step. So what we're going to be doing is using some evergreen strip. This is a 0.8 square styrene strip, and we're basically just going to build a box around the nut and along the sides of the nut to hold it in place, prevent it spinning. So let's get that one sorted. So basically what we've done is just built a cage around the nut, and that enables us to move the bolt in and out as we need. So at a later stage, when we come to fit the pedestals and mount the model on the base, we just need to put an M8 bolt through the pedestal and up into this nut. So that's the first job done. Okay, so the next job is to fit the internal braces into the hull. So this is right at the beginning of the instruction sheet. 6 of those to fit. Obviously they're going at different points of the hull, so they're all going to be individually sized. And the other thing that we just need to, they look symmetrical on the sprue, but they're not actually, because obviously to accommodate for the taper of the hull, there's a taper on the part as well, so we just need to make sure that they're fitted the right way around. What I'm going to do is do them individually so I don't get them mixed up, although I thought they'd be numbered, but they're not. They're numbered on the sprue obviously, but once they're cut off there's no numbering on the parts, so we'll do those individually just to make sure that, as I say, we don't get them mixed up. So let's get that done now. Okay, so just one thing I'm going to have to be careful of here is there is a bit of play here, and as the part goes down into place it does push the hull apart slightly. So what I'm going to do is just check the fit of the deck when that's in place. I think the deck actually rests on the top of the beam. So the beam provides a support to the direct support to the deck, but obviously this side's got to be level with the bevel on the hull side as well. So I just want to check the fit of that. I don't want to get them in there and find that it's too high to allow the deck to be fitted accurately. So I'll just check that now. So let's just have a look at how this goes into place. It will go into place eventually. So I think what I'm going to do is I'll fit the braces and I'll put the deck in place and just tape the hull sides across just to make sure that everything's level. Okay, so the first step is to fit these 2 forward braces. They cover the extent of the foredeck. I think they're more or less going to be okay, but we'll follow the method that we've just set out. So I'm just using some ordinary Tamiya cement, not the extra thin. I want to get a really good bond on this. careful not to get any glue up onto the point where the deck will sit. So we don't want to be gluing the deck in place at this stage. So that's down in position. These braces actually sit on this ledge here, so I'm just making sure that there's plenty of glue on the contact points. And again, just taking care with you can see the bevel there at the top, in line with the curvature of the hull. So that's the two forward braces. Just going to drop the deck on, just make sure there's no glue in place. There isn't. Just drop the deck on. So that's the deck just temporarily taped in place, which is holding hopefully holding those braces in the correct position until they're set up. So we'll just press on and do that with the other 4 braces. There are 6 in total to go right the way aft. So we'll get that done and come back after that. Okay, so the braces inside have had time to set up, so we'll take the decks off and see how we did. Okay, so they're nice and solid now, so we've got a very rigid hull that we can start to do the rest of the work on. So what we need to do next is to remove the mould seam from the underside of the hull, and there are some sprue gates along the bottom as well from where the part was made originally. So I'm going to press ahead and remove these mould seams using some wet and dry and various different grades of sandpaper, and I'll just do a check spray with some primer just to make sure that I've got that nice and smooth. So I'm going to press on with that, and we'll come back when that work's being done. So I'm just working along the underside of the hull. I'm using I think it's an 800 grade sponge sanding stick. So I use a sponge stick just to help follow some of these curves on the underneath, rather than a straight stick, which sometimes just gouges into a curved moulding. So these sponge sanding sticks are much better for this purpose. Actually, it's not just this central mould line that I'm trying to eliminate. Trumpeter have also used what's called slide moulding technology, because they weren't able to recreate these housings for the propeller shafts by using a simple 2-half mould, and that's because of this curve behind the prop shaft. So they've used a separate slide mould to insert this section here, but what that's done is resulted in a mould mark here and one here, so we're going to have to get rid of those as well as the central seam. So as I say, we'll be using this sanding stick and various grades of wet and dry to press on and get these seams removed. One thing about using wet and dry wet is it does take away the debris as you're working, and it's also a little bit gentler on the plastic. You get fewer scratches when you're using water with sanding materials. So I always do that. So at this point we just need to be careful to not lose that sharp definition there, so I don't want to be doing too much right on the edge, so just go gently at this point. I just want to preserve that mould, which is of the armour belt. Okay, so that's not too bad at the minute. We just need to deal with these scars from the sprue gates, which I'm just going to do with some cyano and some accelerator, which is just going to be a bit quicker than using putty. So let's get that done. Okay, so that instantly hardens the cyano. You can sand it straight away. Okay, let's see how we did. We're just going to test the work with some Tamiya primer in the airbrush. Okay, so you can see that the primer's just revealed a couple of spots where I've missed, just to the back of the propeller shaft housing there, and just a little bit here. So I'm just going to go back in with some 400 wet and dry, just to get rid of those last little bits. Okay, so I'm happy with the underside with the seam work that we've done there. Now I just want to start with the degaussing cable, which you can just see along the top here. One thing that I'm just going to have to be careful with is the portholes just have some tiny moulded, they're called wriggles, they're actually like rainwater gutters just above the portholes themselves, and they're moulded. So I just want to, they're quite close to the degaussing coil in some parts, and I just want to preserve those. So I'll probably just mask over those bits that I want to keep. And the other difficulty with this is that the hull at this point has got a concave moulding to it. So I'm just going to have to use a curved blade to scrape that part of the degaussing coil away. Elsewhere where it's flat it's a bit easier, but what I don't want to use is a straight blade or a flat blade on a concave surface, because I'll end up gouging the surface, and that'll end up with filling and lots of messing about that I don't really want to do. So a curved blade and gentle work along the edge there. The other thing that I want to do obviously is preserve the nice sharp edge on the top of the moulding. So curved blade, nice and gentle work, and hopefully we'll get there. It's quite a big piece of work to do. It's quite, you know, we've got best part of 2.5 meters of moulding to remove on both sides of the ship, so it'll take quite a while to do that, but we'll get there. Okay, so we're using a curved blade just to remove this section of the degaussing coil, but first of all I just want to protect this detail here. So just a bit of tape to go over that. So it's just a case of working along the hull and scraping the moulding away. Just being careful not to let the blade slip down and damage this sharp edge here, which is the edge of the deck and hull side. So as you close in on removing the moulding, you'll see that you just get this white line, which means that you're very close to having the piece flat. When that white line disappears, you're more or less level with the surrounding plastic, and at that stage you don't want to go any further with the blade, and finish off with some wet and dry just to smooth the area off. So at this point we're not going to be able to come in from the top because of these mouldings for some bollards above on the deck. So we just switch the knife round and obviously coming in from underneath on that one. Okay, so I've removed the fairing from the top, sanded it flush with the top line of the hull, and that's ready now for the replacement etched fairing from the Pontos set. We won't be putting that on until the decks have progressed a little bit further. Just needs a little bit more work. You can just see the shadow of the plastic coil there. Just needs a little bit more work, but as I said, we'll do that after a coat of primer just to see how much work there is to be done. I don't want to be sanding and go too far. So a coat of primer will tell me how much more work I need to do on that. Okay, so we've worked around the hull now and removed the degaussing coil from the upper part of the side hull. One or two tricky areas. This one here, where the moulding came down over that edge, and I wanted to preserve that nice sharp edge there, so that was a bit tricky. We managed to preserve all the wriggles above the portholes. I'm not concerned about that a little bit because that whole fairing is removed, so I didn't try and get that off. And a bit tricky, as I said, under that moulding there. Needs a little bit more work on it. So that's one step out of the way. I'll just show you what we're going to be replacing that with. So from the Pontos etched set, we'll be using these strips, which is how the degaussing cable actually looked. It was attached at intervals with these fixings that are reproduced in the etched brass. So that's going to look a whole lot better than the moulded unit. Of course, it's going to take quite a bit of fitting along the edge there. You can see also that Pontos have done the double cable here and the single cable here, which is mainly on the aft part of the ship. And you can just see there where it transitions from twin to single. So all that's taken care of in the set, and obviously it will be a big improvement over the moulding that Trumpeter provided. But that's going to be put on at a later stage. I want to get the decks on and other bits and pieces of work done before I attempt to fit the first bits of etched brass. Okay, so that's it for this video. In the next one we're going to be tackling the decks. There's quite a bit of work to do on the decks. We'll refer to the Pontos instructions. So this is page 3 of the instructions. You can see that it highlights in purple here all the pieces of plastic on the decks that need removing in readiness for the wooden deck and the Pontos etched parts. So what I've done in conjunction with that drawing is to mark up the decks with those areas that need taking off. We'll be doing that in the next video, and I don't think we'll be actually fixing the decks because I want to work out whether or not we need to do any work on the hose pipes. So they've just got a hole in at the minute here at the front, and I'm contemplating whether or not to add some more detail to those with some tubing so that I actually connect the outside of the hose pipe exit with the hose pipes on the deck itself. So just need to have a think about that. I'll work out what to do before the next video, and we'll be covering that then. So that's it for now. I should be back next week once we've done all that work, and hope to see you then. So if you want to pick those videos up, you can subscribe to the channel and you'll have automatic updates about when that video is prepared. As I said, it should be next week sometime, so I'm aiming for a weekly update on this build, and I hope you'll follow me with that. So that's it for now. Bye bye.